This happened to me about 16 years ago when I was 12. I was in a scout group in Spain. Scouting here's a bit more relaxed and modern than what you might picture. Every summer, we had this tradition called a raid, a multi-day hike through the wilderness where we camped and navigated on our own. No adults, no supervision, just us kids with maps, food, and whatever survival knowledge we'd picked up. That year, my group of 15 kids, both guys and girls aged 12 to 14, planned a 3-day hike through the Pyrenees, a beautiful but rugged mountain range in northeastern Spain. We were supposed to climb a nearly 10,000-foot mountain and camp by a glacial lake near the summit. We knew it would be a challenge, but we were excited. We set out in the morning and hiked all day, but by early evening, we realized we weren't going to reach the lake before dark. So we found a flat spot off the trail and set up camp. Just some tarps and sticks near a big rock. Nothing fancy. The closest road was about 6 miles away, and the nearest village even farther. We were deep in the mountains, completely isolated, but we felt safe and free. It was actually kind of magical. After dinner, with some daylight left, a few of us volunteered to go refill our water bottles at a spring we'd passed earlier. I was one of them. It was me and 3 friends, and we grabbed a couple of flashlights just in case it got dark before we got back. Sure enough, night fell while we were walking back. We could still hear our group in the distance, laughing and singing. But then, one of my friends froze. He pointed at something just off the trail, a reflective roadside marker, the kind you'd see next to a highway. Only this one was shattered, torn to pieces. And it definitely hadn't been there earlier. Just like that, the whole vibe shifted. We weren't relaxed anymore. We were on edge. We rushed back to the shelter and told the others what we found. Panic spread fast. We were just kids, remember, and our minds jumped straight to worst-case scenarios. Who else was out here with us? Why would someone drag a destroyed road sign all the way into the wilderness? 2 of the older kids, both 14, decided to go check things out. They grabbed flashlights, each took a knife and a whistle, so we'd know if they got in trouble, and disappeared into the darkness. The rest of us huddled inside the shelter, silent and terrified. Some of the girls were crying. Someone suggested singing to distract ourselves. So we did, quietly, in shaky voices. But even that didn't last long. Then we heard it. Whistling. 2 sharp blasts coming fast. Our friends burst back into camp, out of breath and completely panicked. They told us they'd found something disturbing. A tall wooden stake standing upright in the ground, covered in blood. A lot of blood. Too much for any of us to stay calm. Kids were crying again, some praying. I sat there gripping my knife, heart pounding, convinced we weren't going to make it through the night. The older boys said they were going back out, said they wanted to confront whoever was out there. And if things went bad, they'd draw him away from us. We begged them not to go, but none of us had the nerve to stop them. They left. We were frozen. No one spoke. No one moved. The shelter was completely still, except for the sound of heavy breathing and the occasional sniffle. I remember sitting there thinking, I'll do whatever it takes to survive tonight. If someone shows up, I'm not going down without a fight. Minutes dragged by, and then we heard footsteps. Fast ones, running, then screaming. Not the kind of scream you fake to scare someone. Full-on panic. We saw our 2 friends sprinting back toward us yelling. They were being chased. And behind them, 2 men. We all braced ourselves. Knives out, ready to defend ourselves. The men stopped just at the edge of the shelter, and then they started laughing. They were our camp leaders. They'd followed us out there, stayed hidden, and decided to prank us. Everything, the broken sign, the blood, the rabbit stick, it was all a setup, a twisted joke. We didn't think it was funny. Some kids had trouble breathing from how hard they were crying. A few of us were still clutching our knives. We'd been ready to kill someone. And that's when the leaders realized how badly they had messed up. Their prank had pushed 13 kids to the brink of violence. They apologized over and over, but we didn't care. We just wanted them gone, but also not too far, because we were still too terrified to sleep alone. They ended up staying the night with us, but it took months to forgive them. That night is burned into my memory. Not because it turned violent, but because it almost did. Now that I'm older, I think about how close that night came to ending differently. If someone had been out there to hurt us, they would have picked the wrong group of kids. We were scared out of our minds, but we were also completely ready to fight. This is one of those stories where I look back and think, what the hell was I thinking? It happened a couple years ago, and honestly, I'm just grateful it didn't end worse than it did. I'd been chatting with this guy on a dating app for a few weeks. He seemed cool, normal even, and eventually we decided to meet up. Here's the part where I made a dumb call. Instead of driving myself to the date, I let him pick me up. My anxiety about driving can get bad, and it just felt easier at the time. But man, I should have just powered through it. What I did was straight up reckless, and I know that now. So he pulls up outside my place and tells me we're going out for sushi. Great, I love sushi. We hop in his car, he puts the restaurant into the GPS, and off we go. Everything seems fine at first. Casual chat, small talk, normal stuff. But then I start noticing something weird outside my window. Trees. A lot of them. Like dense woods, middle of nowhere kind of scenery. And suddenly, that friendly vibe in the car shifted. I asked him, "Aren't we supposed to be heading toward town? This doesn't look right." He glances at the GPS and says, "I swear, this is just where it's taking us. I didn't pick this way." I tried to stay calm, but inside I was freaking out. The road was narrow, winding, and not a soul in sight. I couldn't even see a house or gas station, just forest. He must have noticed I looked like I was about to jump out of the car, because he kept saying, "I'm not doing anything weird, I swear." But when I tried to pull up the GPS on my phone to check the route myself, that's when I noticed I had no signal. That sent me over the edge. He kept driving and insisting that the GPS just chose the weirdest possible route. Meanwhile, I was sweating and freezing at the same time, trying to act like I wasn't seconds away from a panic attack. He even tried to joke, "If you're thinking I've got a body in the trunk or a shovel, I promise I don't." After what felt like an eternity, we actually did pull up at a sushi place. I couldn't believe we'd made it. I was shaking when I stepped out of the car. It had taken us nearly an hour to get there through this backwoods horror movie route. But part of me figured, hey, he had his chance. If he was going to kill me, he could have done it by now. Maybe the guy's just socially clueless. We sit down. I try to eat, but my nerves are still shot. That's when he hits me with the most bizarre follow-up. He leans in and goes, "So, when do you think we'll have sex?" I nearly choked on my sashimi. "Excuse me?" He goes on, like he's negotiating some deal. "You know, are you the type who waits a day, a week, a month? Just so I know." I just sat there, stunned. Didn't even know how to respond. Then he says, "Well, I'm just saying, I can't wait a whole month." I didn't say much after that. The whole rest of the date was painfully awkward. I just waited for the check and ordered an Uber. No way was I getting back in that car with him again. The moment I got into the Uber, I noticed something that made my stomach drop all over again. The route home took 15 minutes. 15. And it was all normal roads. Traffic lights, other cars, people walking around. Not a single dirt trail or creepy forest in sight. It didn't add up. Why did it take him nearly an hour to get me to the same place my Uber left in 15 minutes? Was his GPS really that messed up? Or did he take me on a detour for some other reason? I'll never really know. Maybe he was just weird and clueless. Maybe it was all innocent. Or maybe I got extremely lucky. That night was a massive wake-up call. No matter how normal someone seems online, don't ever, ever let a stranger from a dating app pick you up. Meet in public. Drive yourself. Trust your instincts. Back in 2015, when I was just 16, I lived in this tiny, worn-out beach town that barely showed up on a map. It was the kind of place where nothing ever happened, so forgotten and remote that even the neighboring towns probably didn't know we existed. For us teenagers, there were only three things to do: hit the movies, swim at the beach, or hang out at this sad excuse for an amusement spot called Miller's Fun Park. Now, calling it a fun park is generous. The arcade machines barely worked, the batting cages looked like they'd collapse if you looked at them wrong, and the mini golf course was covered in weeds. But the go-karts, that's where things got sketchy. These weren't the kind of go-karts you see at commercial parks. These were rickety death traps on wheels, speeding around a track that was all sharp turns and loose gravel. One summer night, my cousin Emma and I decided to hit up the go-karts for a little fun. It was close to 10 p.m., late enough that we knew it'd be mostly deserted, which honestly was part of the appeal. I picked her up and we drove out to Miller's, which sits at the edge of a wide-open field. The beach is a few miles down in one direction, and on the opposite side of the road are dense woods that seem to stretch on forever. The whole place feels like it's hanging off the edge of civilization. When we got there, the lot was practically empty. There were maybe a couple of teen guys messing around in the arcade, and this older man, probably mid-60s, sitting alone on a bench by the rusted batting cages. We didn't think much of it, paid for our tickets and walked over to the go-karts. I was so focused on not flipping the cart on the sharp turns that I didn't notice the old guy had wandered over to the fence until our last lap. That's when I saw him standing there, just behind the barrier, staring at me with the creepiest expression I've ever seen. It was like this cracked smile frozen on his face, and his eyes, man, those eyes were dark and weirdly shiny. Trying to shake it off, I handed our second ticket to the guy running the ride, who looked way too high to function, and went for another spin. But this time, I couldn't concentrate. I kept glancing toward the fence, and sure enough, that guy hadn't moved. Every time I passed him, he was still there, eyes locked on me, just standing there like he had all the time in the world. What really got me was that he was standing right next to the exit gate, and we only had one ticket left. After that last lap, we had to pull back into the lanes, and of course, he was still there, basically hovering by the gate. As I stepped out of the cart, I glanced at Emma to see if she was catching any of this, but she seemed oblivious, just laughing about how she beat me. As I pushed open the gate, the man stepped directly in front of me. "Hey there," he said, voice scratchy and dry like he hadn't had water in hours. He reeked of cigarettes. "What are you cute girls doing all alone out here?" Emma walked up beside me, now clearly catching on that something was off. What?" she asked, eyebrows raised. He smiled wider, and it gave me the worst chill down my back. "So, late at night. Do your parents know where you are?" Trying to stay calm, I lied. "Yeah, they're actually waiting for us. We need to get going." I tried to walk past him, but he stepped in closer and grabbed my shoulder. "Nah," he said. "I saw you two pull up alone." My stomach twisted. So he had been watching us. Then he said, "Why don't I walk you to your car?" I was frozen, looking at Emma for help. Without missing a beat, she stepped between us and said sharply, "Actually, we were just heading to the arcade. Her boyfriend's meeting us." Total bluff. My boyfriend wasn't even in town, but it worked. His face darkened, and the fake smile dropped. "Boyfriend," he muttered, like it left a bad taste in his mouth. Emma didn't wait. She grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the arcade. It was nearly empty now. No workers, no teens, but it felt safer than being outside with him. We ducked behind a claw machine, both of us out of breath. I whispered, "I left my phone in the car." She groaned, "Mine's charging at home." We're gonna have to make a run for it." "You're insane," I hissed. "What if he's waiting out there?" We went back and forth on it. Emma suggested asking the go-kart worker for help, but the guy looked like he couldn't spell help, let alone provide it. Finally, Emma stood up. "We just have to go, now." We crept out, scanning the area. The place was dead quiet. Every shadow looked like him. Emma told me to get my keys ready as we neared my car, and I stopped dead. "I didn't lock the car," I whispered. She looked at me wide-eyed. "What?" "I didn't lock it. What if he's inside?" Emma started moving toward the driver's side to check, and I tried to hold her back, but she slipped away. She leaned in, squinting into the darkness. Then, out of nowhere, we heard it. Heavy footsteps pounding against pavement. We both spun around. He was sprinting at us, full speed, coming out of the woods like he'd been hiding there, just waiting. We screamed and ran for the car. I reached the handle, locked. Thank God I had locked it. My hands were shaking as I tried to unlock it. Emma was yelling from the passenger side. I finally flung the door open and dove in just as he reached me. He started slamming his fists against the window, shouting something I couldn't even make out. I hit the lock button and jammed the key into the ignition, still crying. Emma was shouting at me to go, and I did. Reversed so fast I almost hit a fence, then whipped the car around and floored it. He was still chasing us, sprinting down the road, but we didn't stop until we hit town. Emma had to help me steer a few times because I could barely see through the tears. Somehow, we made it back to my house, hearts racing, hands trembling. We never told anyone, not our parents, not our friends. Looking back, I wish we had. Maybe it would have stopped that guy from hurting someone else. But at the time, we were scared they'd blame us for being there so late or not being more careful. We never went back to Miller's Fun Park after that night. And if there's one thing I'd tell anyone listening, never assume some sleepy little town is too boring for bad things to happen. This happened when I was 14. I was asked to babysit my 3 younger cousins, 8, 4, and just barely 1, in this ridiculously remote mountain area of Pennsylvania. My aunt and uncle had a wedding to attend over an hour away, and they wouldn't be back until late. Their place was perched on the side of a mountain, and when I say remote, I mean no neighbors in sight, no streetlights, and pitch black once the sun dipped. Their back deck had a steep drop, like 15 feet straight down a rocky hill that sloped into a river. Just getting there required knowing exactly where to turn, otherwise you'd never find it. This wasn't the kind of place someone could accidentally drive to. Before they left, they gave me a phone number next to the landline, some pizza for dinner, and told me to call if anything went wrong. Cell service out there was a joke, so the landline was my only option. The baby was already asleep in the crib. The 4-year-old wasn't feeling great, and had passed out on the couch with the TV on, and I was upstairs in the loft playing Guitar Hero with my 8-year-old cousin. The setup of the loft was kind of perfect. I could see the living room below to check on the little ones, and directly to the right was a massive window that looked out over the driveway. Now, the layout of the property is important. The road leading to their house ended right at their forked driveway. Go left, and you hit a carport. That's where everyone normally parked. Go right, and the driveway dipped steeply into a flat area in front of a garage. No one ever parked down there. That spot was where the kids played. Bikes, scooters, toys. It was like a minefield of childhood chaos. Everyone who knew them knew that side was off limits for cars. So it's about 10 p.m., totally dark, not even moonlight. And my cousin and I are mid-song on Guitar Hero when I notice headlights from the corner of my eye. These weren't minivan headlights either. This was a lifted truck with bright roof lights, the kind you'd see on some off-road Jeep. What threw me was that the truck didn't go left. It turned down the right driveway, the kids' play area. Immediately, something felt off. I froze. I asked my cousin if he recognized the truck. He looked out the window and shook his head. No, I don't know who that is. I told him to go downstairs with me so we could check on the other kids. I didn't know what this guy wanted, but I wasn't taking chances. The baby was still asleep, thankfully. I picked up the landline to call 911, and that's when I heard it. The unmistakable sound of the garage door being yanked. Hard. Someone was trying to lift it. That garage door was never used. No one opened it, not even my uncle. Then I heard the door beside it, the one with the window, rattling. Someone was jiggling the doorknob, but they weren't knocking. They weren't calling out, just silently trying to force their way in. The lights were off down there. They had to know nobody was in that room. I was whispering with the 911 operator, explaining what was happening, and my cousin was latched onto my arm. I could barely hold the phone. My hands were shaking so badly. The dispatcher told me she was contacting my aunt and uncle and to stay on the line. I turned around to grab the phone number they'd left. And that's when I saw him. There, right up against the sliding glass door, was this massive man. Easily over 6 feet tall, wide shoulders, long, messy red hair, and a matching thick beard. And the way he was grinning at me, it wasn't friendly. It was twisted, like he was enjoying the fear on my face. Behind him stood a second guy, also tall but leaner. I couldn't make out his face, but it was clear he wasn't there to help. I gasped and told the operator, "They're at the door. They're here." My cousin suddenly said something I wasn't expecting. "Mr. Jim." I looked at him, confused. "You know who that is?" He nodded slowly, but didn't say much more. I turned back toward the door and shouted, "I'm on the phone with the police." The big guy just stared at me. He looked almost like he was weighing his options. Then, without a word, he slowly backed away into the dark. A few minutes later, we saw the truck reverse out of the lower driveway, back up the road, and vanish. I stayed frozen on the phone until a sheriff finally showed up about 25 minutes later. They swept the property and stayed with us until my aunt and uncle got back. As soon as they walked in, my uncle's whole expression changed. He was pissed. Not at me, at Mr. Jim. Turns out he was some shady acquaintance of my uncle's, someone the kids had met a couple times in passing. My aunt immediately told my uncle to tell Jim to never come back, and she meant it. There was yelling, but I wasn't really paying attention anymore. I was still processing that smile, that stare. Later, I learned my uncle had a drug problem, and Mr. Jim, who knows what he wanted, but it was obvious he wasn't there to say hello. He wasn't just knocking on the wrong door. He was trying to get in. That much was clear. Maybe he thought my uncle had something valuable, or something else. I try not to think about it too much. Needless to say, I never babysat there again, and not long after, my aunt divorced my uncle and moved out. I haven't been back to that house since. Where I'm from, crime is almost non-existent. Like you'll hear about a stolen bike or maybe a drunk fight at a bar. But murder? Kidnapping? That stuff barely exists here. So it's not unusual for people to walk around alone at night without thinking twice. Still, I'm from a small town surrounded by thick woods, and honestly, those woods give me the creeps. I usually don't go out by myself at night, but when I'm with friends, I love the peace and quiet of a night walk. Just last week, my best friend and I decided to take one of our usual walks. It's a route we've done countless times. We know it like the back of our hands. We were just chatting and laughing like always, not even thinking about anything scary. The first part of our path is nice and calm, lit up by street lamps with a few houses scattered around. Not densely packed or anything, but enough to make you feel like you're not totally alone. Then we reach this tunnel that marks the beginning of the darker part of the walk. That's where the pavement ends, and a bumpy gravel road takes over. As we get to the tunnel, we notice something strange right away. A white van is parked off to the side. right near the ditch beside the road. It's just sitting there, turned off, and it instantly gives us an uneasy feeling. We nervously joke about it like, haha, someone's gonna follow us, trying to brush it off. But when we pass it, I look a little closer and swear I see a silhouette inside. My friend gets annoyed at me for saying that. She thought I was just trying to scare her on purpose. Once we're through the tunnel, the road takes a sharp left and goes uphill. It's not a long or steep climb, and once you're up, you walk down into this stretch of road that's kind of eerie. There's dense forest on one side and an open field for growing hops on the other. And at night, it's pitch black out there. No lights, no houses, just us and the gravel crunching under our feet. Still, we're laughing and talking, trying to ignore how dark it is, when we suddenly notice a light behind us. At first, we think it's just a car coming from one of the farms further down the road. That's not unusual. People live and work out there. So we casually move to the side and keep walking. Then we glance back again, and it's the same white van from earlier. We stop talking. Both of us go dead silent. The van isn't driving past us either. It's just slowly creeping behind us. We keep walking a little faster, but it matches our pace. When we slow down, it slows down. When we speed up, it revs up. That's when I felt full-on panic set in. I bumped my friend on the arm, looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Run, into the field, now." No hesitation. We both take off running, stumbling through rows of soil and plants in the hops field, trying not to trip over anything. We eventually drop down behind one of the mounds of dirt and crouch there, hearts pounding, holding our breath. The van comes to a stop. Its headlights flip on, high beams, and light up the field. Then the doors open, and two men get out. They both have their hoods up, and each of them is carrying a flashlight. They start shining the lights across the field, scanning, looking for something, or someone. For what felt like forever, we didn't move. We just stayed crouched down, trying not to make a sound. Eventually, they got back into the van, turned it around right there in the road, and slowly drove off in the direction they came from. The second they were out of sight, we bolted through the rest of the field. The houses start up again near the edge of it, so once we were back under the glow of a street lamp, we finally let ourselves breathe. I don't know who those guys were or what they were planning, but I've never been followed like that before. And that night was enough to keep both of us off that path for a long, long time. This happened back in 2016, and honestly, I hadn't thought about it in a long time. Until tonight. I couldn't sleep, and suddenly this memory just crept back into my mind like some warning I almost ignored. At the time, I had just moved back to my old college town after a rough breakup. I was crashing in a small apartment with a friend and scrambling to find work. I didn't care what it was, restaurant, retail, anything. I just needed a paycheck. I was applying through all the usual sites, but I used Indeed the most because it made it easy to keep track of applications and see updates. I'd also applied to a couple places directly through their own websites and kept tabs on everything. A couple weeks into the job hunt, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. The area code wasn't even from around my state, but since I was desperate for work, I picked up. A woman was on the line. She sounded professional and told me she was calling to set up an interview for a position I'd applied to. The thing is, I didn't recognize the company name at all. I had my laptop open already, so while I was on the phone, I started checking through my job history on Indeed. I even checked the companies I'd applied to directly. There was nothing that matched. Still, I played it cool and didn't let on. I figured maybe I'd applied late one night and forgotten. I asked for the address, wrote it down, and thanked her. But something about the call just didn't sit right. She was really pushy about getting me in that same evening. No flexibility, just kind of insisting I come in around dusk. After we hung up, That sense of unease started growing fast. I immediately looked up the phone number she called from. Nothing. It wasn't connected to any business at all. Then I searched the address. That's when my stomach turned. It was way out in the middle of nowhere, almost an hour's drive from where I lived, not even close to the areas I'd been applying in. I opened Google Street View and checked out the address. What I saw was basically a few rundown buildings off some exit ramp. No signs, no real storefronts, just this almost abandoned stretch of road and empty parking lots. It looked more like a place where you'd dump a broken fridge, not conduct interviews. As I stared at that screen, picturing myself driving out there around sunset, something inside me screamed not to go. It was like my whole body was warning me. I brought it up to my roommate, explained the whole situation, and even he wasn't sure. He told me I might be overthinking it, but said if I didn't feel right about it, I should trust that instinct. I didn't go. And honestly, I'm so glad I didn't. The more time that's passed, the more I realize just how sketchy it all was. I mean, a fake job interview at a remote location, rushed into happening at night? Yeah, no. Looking back, I really wish I had taken it to the police. But I had tried going to them a year before when an ex was harassing me and they barely took me seriously. So I didn't trust them to care. To this day, I don't know what was waiting at that address, but it's chilling to think what might have happened if I had actually shown up.